Hey everybody, Austin here again with a Let's Play walkthrough. This time, as you can see, it's going to be the Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Sega Genesis, or Megadrive. This is a game I've covered multiple times on my channel. It's one of my favorite games on the Sega Genesis. It's got some awesome music, it's got awesome graphics, the gameplay is really fun, and it's got a decent enough amount of challenge for it to remain interesting, even after you've gotten really good at the game. And so I just love going through this game multiple times a year. And I love showing it off on this channel. And with this latest Let's Play format, ever-evolving Let's Play format, you know, this has given me a good excuse to redo this playthrough again, actually, I think for the third time. So this is my third time doing this game on this channel as a Let's Play. The first one I think was back in 2011 or 2012. It's been a long time now, long time coming. So I've actually done several runs of this in the last week or so. While this is not the most complicated game out there, I think most people should be able to figure this out pretty well. There are some new strategies I sort of picked up and added to my own repertoire of strategies for Batman and Robin. And so what we're going to do is do another full playthrough of this game. I'm going to talk my way through it as I always do on my Let's Plays and my walkthroughs. But yeah, I'm going to just talk, and if you're new to this game, hopefully this playthrough can help you out. If you've already experienced this game, you're already decent at it, you know, kick back, relax, enjoy the playthrough. It is an awesome game to just watch in action because there's so much like crazy animation, so many crazy boss fights. The soundtrack is just kicking, and you know, hopefully you can just kick back and relax and enjoy the playthrough for what it is. But for those of you guys that are new, we'll have some pop-ups on the sides of the screen as always, you know, with, you know, focusing on tips and stuff like that. And as always, I'll be talking my way through the game and, you know, trying to explain on the fly why I do things the way I do. So, yeah, one of the cool things about Batman and Robin is just got this constantly rolling intro. And the title screen theme goes on forever. I swear it's like 5 minutes long. And that's actually how a lot of the music is in this game. The tracks are super long and dynamic. It's one of the soundtrack's not going to be for everybody, but it's one of my absolute favorites, not just on the Genesis, but like one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. I still, you know, pump it in the background as I just do random stuff around the apartment. It's that good. For those of you guys that have never actually seen this before, there is an options menu. You have credits. We're going to just leave it on the default 6. I'm not going to be using any credits. It doesn't really matter for me. But you do have a music test, and that's what I wanted to show off. You do have a sound test menu, but it's the music test that you know, most people will really care about. But that's it as far as options. And then if you hit the start button here, you just jump right into your character select. Now, if you let this sit here for too long, it will automatically select your character. But aesthetics aside, there is no difference between the two characters. This is a two-player at the same time game. So one player can play as Batman, the other can play as Robin. So pretty cool feature, good co-op game. And here we go, just right into stage 1. Now, there is a little trick we can do at the very beginning here, and I'm gonna see if I can do it. And about 3 or 4 screens over, what happens is if you kill enemies really, really fast as they spawn in, you can actually make an extra life appear. So what we want to do is try to get rid of these guys as quickly as possible, and we'll see if we can make that happen. You want to kill every enemy on the screen, I believe, so kill him. Oh, I screwed it up. But basically, that top left guy would have spawned an extra life. I ended up practicing it on stream multiple times, and you know, got it pretty consistently. But you have to be really fast with it, and you have to kill all the enemies. And interestingly, this is one of the new things I picked up through playing this game again this last week. I did about 7 or 8 runs of this game to get refamiliarized with it, and basically, there are certain sections where if you kill enemies fast enough, you know, they'll drop an extra life. There's another opportunity on the second stage as well, right after this. And if the extra life drops, I will point it out just so you know. So the basics of Batman and Robin are just kind of interesting. You can press jump and then jump again in the air to do a jump kick. And down and jump again will do a downward jump kick, just like so. It's very useful. The jump kick does rapid damage. You'll actually do multiple hits back to back, and it's a you know, it's a good move to do. Now you'll notice these bat symbols on the right here. These are my weapon upgrades, and what we're gonna do is actually stick with red I know it looks orange, but the instruction manual actually calls it the red power-up. So you've got red, green, and blue. And the green is a bolo, which is very useful. The blue is a shuriken, not as useful. And the red is the batarang. And the batarang is actually insanely good in this game, and it is my preferred weapon to use for pretty much most of the playthrough. There is going to be a point or two where I recommend switching up to the bolo, but to make your life the easiest, I recommend sticking with the batarang for most of the playthrough. And there's another one right there. And what we're going to do is just kind of wait for it to cycle. It will disappear after a little while. But you can still be patient, let it cycle to the power-up that you want. And we've got some floating hearts. This is where hearts start appearing. Little tiny hearts, little baby hearts, I'll call them. And, you know, you notice that I've taken a lot of hits already. And, you know, this is the point in the game where you don't have to really worry as much about taking damage because there are so many health drops in this game. Now, try not to take too much damage, like on this boss fight here. But yeah, this is our first boss. It's basically a machine that shoots at you, but Harley Quinn is actually on the inside, and we'll actually see her on the last phase of this fight. So basically, the machine goes all the way across the screen, goes all the way back, and then does this spread shot, and you want to be down, and then you want to jump afterwards. And if you don't kill it fast enough, it'll actually blaze right across the screen. So now what we want to do is watch for the gun again, and then just jump and duck. So let it charge. Jump, duck, just like so. This is a very memorization-heavy game in terms of boss fights. The levels, not so much so, but the boss fights, 100%. You have to memorize them. And that's usually sort of a sticking point for a lot of players that are just starting to learn this game, is they might blaze through the levels themselves, but the boss fights in particular, they struggle with. And so basically, Harley Quinn just kind of goes to the left-hand side of the screen, stops, throws some bombs at you, and then she'll throw some more bombs, go back to the middle, then she'll go to the right. It's a pretty basic pattern here. You can actually try to play it safe, like I am. No need to rush here if you want to minimize the amount of damage taken, but pretty good fight overall. I took a hit or two, nothing too crazy. But here, right into stage 2. And we got these pots here. The pots will actually drop some power-ups, like some hearts. We just got our second to last batarang update. Update. It's like it's modern gaming. We gotta update. Gotta update our firepower. No, our upgrade. But yeah, one more. It will turn it into a three-way spread shot, which is very handy. And it's one of the reasons why I recommend the batarang over pretty much any other weapon. And there we go. They actually dropped an extra life right there. That was because I killed enough enemies fast enough. Just like the third or fourth screen over on the very first stage. This is another section where an extra life will appear if you kill enough enemies fast enough. So now one thing I haven't really mentioned yet is you do have hand-to-hand combat. If you get close to enemies, let go of the firepower, you can actually punch, and sometimes Batman and Robin will kick. I don't really think there's any difference in damage output between punching and kicking. It just seems to be random which attack comes out. But that is something to keep in mind. The punching and kicking is useful on certain parts. There's some big enemies where you can just get up to them and just, you know, whack them with a fist or a kick. Very useful attack. But you do have to be cognizant of the fact that you can do that, because if you let go of your firepower for some reason, or your fire button, and you want to actually just shoot again, you got to remember that if you're too close to an enemy, your characters will automatically punch or kick. There's another extra life right there. Some extra lives in this game are actually static. They appear in the exact same spot every time you play. Others are hidden. And you notice that I've actually got a three-way shot right now. What I'll do is actually, I will demonstrate the shuriken. It's also a three-way shot, just like the batarang, but the problem with the shuriken is that it's weaker for some reason. I don't really understand that gameplay design mechanic, the shuriken being much weaker than the batarang. And, but it is what it is. Just avoid it if you're playing solo. If you're playing with a friend, maybe it'd be fun to have one player use the batarang and the other use the shuriken, just to mix things up. But I don't recommend it in single player play. Now, it's actually not too bad on the very first level here. But anything past the first stage or two, I don't recommend using it at all. Now its benefit is if you charge it up, it actually does this like lightning style attack, which is actually pretty useful. It seems to do a lot of hits on enemies. And that is one thing I haven't really explained yet, is if you don't shoot, you notice your meter on the top will actually charge up. It'll do a very, very powerful shot. It's very powerful regardless of what weapon you're using. And it'll just slice and dice through multiple enemies at once. Now there is a mechanic I wanted to take note of here. Is you'll notice that there are a bunch of these little helicopter-looking dudes that fly through the sky, and it looks like they're actually not going to spawn anymore. Generally, they just keep spawning. There's some green ones packed in with them. The green ones will actually give you health. So if you get to this section without a full health bar, it's extremely easy to refill it for the boss fight here, which is, again, Harley Quinn. So, yeah, she's got this crane, which is actually really cool looking. And it's one of the visual effects that really impresses people when they play this game for the first time. It's one of the first visual effects, I should say, that really impresses people. And the reason is that, like, the Genesis hardware doesn't really have hardware scaling capabilities like the Super Nintendo's video display processors did. So seeing this stuff on the Genesis is actually just, you know, very impressive. And, you know, it's definitely something that stands out for a lot of people that play this game. And for those of you guys that are seeing this game just for the very first time, this is just the beginning of visual chaos. It's just, the visuals in this game are just off the charts by typical Genesis standards. So this little present right here actually, you know, gives us another weapon power. I'm going to actually switch over to the green, which is the bolo. And the bolo is actually really useful on this boss fight in particular. The bolo, obviously, as you can see, is not a spread shot, but it is very powerful. And there are some people I've seen play this game that actually prefer the bolo for the whole playthrough. Myself, again, I prefer the batarang. It's got a spread shot. It's also very powerful. I stick with it. I find the spread to be a little more useful overall. Now, what I just got there was actually a little, you know, a little power-up that actually is maximizing my charge meter very quickly. Now, it's not instantly charging it, but it's very close to it. Like, it only takes a frame or two for it to charge all the way up. And so when that's happening, what I do is I actually intentionally let go of my firepower, or my fire button, and I time my attacks so I can just constantly do a strong charge attack. Now, there are a few interesting mechanics in this game that should be of note, just so you aren't constantly speculating about things that don't actually exist as you're playing this game. One of them is there are no points or anything if you pick up a firepower item that you already have. Actually, you don't really get any points for firepower upgrades anyway. Same with hearts and things like that. You notice that there is a score up top. The score actually doesn't really have much meaning in this. You get no extra lives from it. And funny enough, when you beat the game, it doesn't even show a final score. So if you're on some kind of like, online forum or Discord server or something like that, and you guys have like a high score club or something, don't play this game as a high score game. It's just, there's not really much point to. Since it doesn't even display your score after the game's over. No leaderboards or anything. So what I'm going to do is actually just stick with the bolo here, and because it's insanely good in this boss fight. So, unfortunately, because of how I'm playing, I'm not going to really be able to describe the bosses that great, because my intent when I play this game is to destroy them as fast as possible, which means you're not going to see a lot of their patterns. But this is the Joker. He basically flies in this hot air balloon, and the bosses in this game are just insanely creative. He first dives down to the right, and then he's going to do it again, just like so. Back to the left. Now he's going to drop on the ground, go right. Now he's going to drop on the ground and go left. So you want to get to the other side of the screen, just like so. He's going to go left, and now he's going to go center. And I can just literally sit here and shoot him just like so. Now he's going to go right. Now, if I know I'm not going to be able to shoot these characters, what I like to do is actually just let my weapon charge up. Now he's just going to do a bunch of jumps. And you just want to lead your shot in the same pattern that he's going to go, just like so. And he's going to jump to the right, and he's going to do the exact same back to the left. And that was literally just like not even probably half of his patterns that he can do. He gets a lot more aggressive, but the point is, if you're fully powered up, you've got the bolo, you just learn the first few sets of patterns, and then you can just annihilate him like that, guaranteed every single time. So unfortunately, the memorization of the boss fights is going to be on you if you're a new player trying to play this game for the first time. But I can at least give you some tips on how to kill the bosses fast, taking advantage of their patterns. So, alright, this is on to the second chapter, which has a series of stages. There's even a shoot-'em-up section in the second half of this level, or I'd say the second 2/3 actually. The shoot-'em-up section is a very long portion of this game. But what I like to do is just sit on one side of the screen or the other. These lamps can actually be busted open, and I'm going to actually try to get my batarang back. And I'm not really too worried about taking the random hit in this game because there are so many health drops. Like, look at those green guys. They're all dropping health. Now, if I wanted to, I can let them drop down to the floor and then hit them so I can actually take advantage of their hearts. But I've got a full health bar now, so it's not really a big deal. But yeah, just look at this batarang. It's got just a massive spread. And what's interesting about the spread on the batarang versus the shuriken is you'll notice the outer batarangs of the pattern actually curve out. It's not just a simple, you know, like Contra-style spread shot where they actually curve a little bit, you know? It's very interesting. So not only is it more powerful than the shuriken, it's also... It has a wider curve, which is interesting, or a wider spread. So you notice that Two-Face is actually coming down now. What I like to do is get to the middle of the screen here. When he drops the dynamite, you want to closely analyze the dynamite. You want to closely watch the dynamite because it'll go to one side of the screen or the other. And if you move to the wrong side of the screen, you're going to take damage guaranteed. And also, they'll sometimes split out too. So you've got to be cognizant of how they split out. If you're not, again, you're going to take damage. Now the green guys start tossing barrels at you. Interestingly, there are these skull power-ups you can get that clear everything off the screen. There's one right there. It actually will not destroy the barrels. So even if you get one of those power-ups and you blow everything away on the screen, you've got to be aware that the barrel is still going to drop on your head. So be careful about that. And again, what I should do is just stay to one side of the screen. Just kind of like so. Now your charge shot is really good against these guys and their barrels. It'll actually just tear right through them completely. But I'm not really too worried about it right now. You know, you can just stay on one side of the screen or the other. Watch for the blue guys because they do have guns, they do shoot. However, you'll find that bullets in this game, except for later on in the playthrough, they're generally pretty slow. Alright, so we've got more dynamite going to the left. He's probably going to come down again. Yep, more dynamite again. Let's see what's going to happen. Is it going to split? Yep. So I basically had to sit in the middle for the first part, move to either side for the second part. Now for those of you guys that are kind of new to this game, you will probably notice that the levels in this game are fairly repetitious. This is a very common theme in this game. The level design isn't typically all that intricate, but it's still fun. So I prefer to have the batarang for this fight. And the reason for that is I can hit multiple turrets at once. And what I like to do is try to focus on a single turret too, like the one on the left. So maybe start with the one on the left, go to the other ones afterwards. And these patterns aren't very difficult to avoid if you just kind of take your time. It took a couple hits, but it's okay. Overall, I'd say this is actually a pretty easy boss fight, especially if you can do rapid damage quickly with the batarang. I have experimented with this with the other weapons, and I find them to be not as useful. The bolo in particular is very powerful. You'd think it would be really good, but it's actually not nearly as good as the batarang. So in this last phase here, Two-Face comes back down. You have to watch out for the dynamite. The big bundles of dynamite, he basically drops on the playfield, and it'll go all the way across the screen. Like this fireball will go all the way across the screen. So you have to jump over it. You have to jump over it. And now your jump kick, I forgot to mention, actually acts as a double jump. And so it's very useful to use your double jump trying to get over big blasts of fire on this boss fight. And then these visuals, again, just out of this world. Just amazing visuals for the console. They hold up very well. Same with this stage right here. This game is just a visual feast from start to finish. So yeah, this is the shoot 'em up section, and I prefer having the Batarang here because it's a spread shot. Spread shots are always great, well, mostly great in shoot 'em ups. And so this one is actually, for those of you guys that are actually familiar with shoot 'em ups, this kind of falls in the category of Euro shmup, where you have inertia on your ship here. Technically, it's just Batman. He's hang gliding. So it takes a little while to get used to the inertia, but it is still pretty fun overall. It's a kind of a nice change of pace from the side-scrolling sections. Now, unfortunately, this part is the longest part of the game. It just goes on and on and on and on. The first third of this, I'd say, actually is paced pretty well. Interesting enemy mix-ups and things like that. But after a point, it just becomes the exact same thing over and over again. Now, there are a few key moments that you'll recognize as you play this game more and more that let you know, like, oh, I'm close to the last part of this level. So, yeah. You've got these gray helicopters. It doesn't take a whole lot to take them out. Then you've got the purple or maroon colored ones. They take a lot more hits. But generally, you don't have to be moving too much with these helicopters. You can usually just kind of sit in the same place. These little biplanes, kind of like classic arcade shooters like the 1943 series, or 1942 and 1943, when you kill a whole strand of them, you will get a power-up. So when you see them come out, a lot of times it's good to actually see what they drop. Now, over the course of, you know, various playthroughs and whatnot, you'll kind of pick up on how power-ups are dropped. Now, some lone enemies will drop power-ups as well, and it's good to recognize that because you don't want to be right on top of that enemy when they drop a power-up, because look, they dropped a weapon power-up there, and if I was right on top of it, I might have accidentally picked up the bolo, which isn't as useful on this stage, or I might have picked up the shuriken by accident, which is a little more useful than the bolo, but it's still weaker than the Batarang, so there's no point in using it. It'll ultimately make your life harder than it would be if you just use the Batarang. So now we got these missiles. They actually split into 4 tiny missiles. Another reason why the Batarang is good. If you have the bolo, you know, it only fires out 1 shot at a time, and so it can actually become very overwhelming. So now what I like to do with these guys is try to point blank them. That's what we call in shoot 'em ups getting close to enemies and having every shot, if it's a part of a spread shot like this, connect with the enemy. You do rapid damage very fast, and so you're gonna see me getting close to enemies intentionally. And this is a mini boss fight right here. I like to sort of keep my distance because its turrets actually will shoot at you, just like so. But I try to be close enough to where at least 2 of my Batarang shots connect. Just like so. And if all 3 connect, then even better. And once you've destroyed basically all 3 turrets, you've got 2 sort of gun turrets, and then you've got 1 missile turret in the middle. It'll start blinking, and this is the last phase of this fight. You have to be really careful here because it'll try to dive bomb you just like that. And I'm trying to do this without taking too much damage, and there we go. It drops a lot of hearts afterwards. That was really close. 1 more hit and I would have died. I'd like to get through this game with as least amount of deaths as possible, just because it's satisfying for me. I like clearing these games with, you know, with smooth runs. Smooth runs feel really good, especially on this game, where there's so much that can go wrong in Batman and Robin. Despite its repetitive nature, despite some of the parts being kind of a cakewalk, there are lots of parts in this game where you're guaranteed to take damage. Like, I don't think it's possible to go through this whole game damageless. I've never even come close, seriously. Even getting a 1 life clear is pretty tough on this game because of some later parts that can just do some crazy damage. And if you're talking and playing at the same time, like this guy right here, it can be even harder to do that. So, but yeah, this is the second half of the level. And so I've got my, well, I had my weapon charge upgrade. It was constantly charging. But there's not much going on right now, so I'm just going to let it charge on its own. And here's another section with just the helicopters for the most part. A lot of times you can just sort of sit in the middle, and you'll notice that they don't really do a whole lot of damage, or not a whole lot of crazy spread patterns, I should say. If I ever see the skulls, though, I try to grab them because they destroy everything that's on screen on these sections here. And try to grab all the hearts I can to maximize my health potential here. There we go, full health bar again, so we're really back in business now. We got full health. Now, there are definitely some things here to note. You do have a few larger ships that are extremely beefy. Oh man, my nose is really itching. I don't know why. I hate it when it just starts itching out of nowhere when I'm doing these playthroughs. But this is one of them. So what I like to do is get up close again and point blank and do as much damage as I can, as fast as I can. If you don't kill those things fast enough, they actually start to dive bomb you, and when you run into an enemy like that, they do a ton of damage. Now, basically any enemy you run into on this level will hurt you. Interestingly, on the side-scrolling platformer sections, a lot of enemies you can actually just run through and not take any damage. Now, there are some where you cannot, and you'll need to recognize what those are as you play this game. But on the shooter section, pretty much everything hurts you if you run into it. So don't touch anything in this this section of the game. So now I'm trying to just kind of avoid weapon power-ups because I don't need them. I'm already maxed out. My nose is still itchy. Oh, man. Alright. There's another skull. Again, like I said, always try to grab them if you see them. A lot of times what I do for power-ups like that, I wait until they get to the backside of the screen. That way, I'm trying to do maximum, you know, damage. Basically having the maximum amount of enemies on the screen, then grabbing the skull to kill the maximum amount of enemies for free. Basically, I don't even have to shoot them. I just grab the skull, and they all go bye-bye. And again, see, just like that. It's killed multiple helicopters. If I had used it a split second sooner, I wouldn't have killed anything because there wasn't anything on screen. And likewise with my weapon charge, I'll let that kind of scroll to the back of the screen and then grab it so I can do hopefully maximum damage on these guys. Because this is a timed power-up. It's not infinite. And it's about to wear off. When it starts to wear off, your meter starts flashing really quickly. And then it's back to slow charging. So like I mentioned at the very beginning of this level, you notice that this gets quite repetitious. And it just kind of drags on and on and on. Even when I was a kid playing this game. I played this game the first year it was out. Such a good game even back then. Even I, as like a 14-year-old back then, recognized the repetitive nature. And actually, you know what's funny is I think the repetitive nature actually bothered me more back then than it does now. It's actually kind of interesting how that works. I've actually become more patient with sections like this as I've gotten older. Some sections. There are some other games that just go on for way too long, or sections go on for way too long, and it does annoy me now. But I like shoot 'em ups a lot, and it is a nice change of pace from the action sections, which can be also a little tedious. So this was a good way to mix up the gameplay dynamic. But some of those big planes that we saw earlier, or jets, we'll actually have to fight multiples of those back-to-back. And when we fight multiples of them back-to-back, that's basically a signal that we're getting close to the next section of this level. The next and final section of this level. We basically have to... ooh, I picked up the bolo by accident. See, that's why you've got to be careful about how close you are to these enemies as you destroy them. But that's fine. The bolo is still powerful, but it's not as good, in my opinion, simply because... oh, there we go. Because it's not a spread shot. So I'm not... Like, if there are multiple enemies on screen, I'm not attacking as many enemies at once. Now, sometimes what I do is if it cycles to a weapon I already have, I try to grab it, because on this section, sometimes you'll push the power-ups off screen, and when you do that, you might accidentally scroll the screen back up and run into it, forgetting that the power-up was even there to begin with. And here we go. This is probably our lead up to the next section of the level, so I'm going to try to just get rid of these jets as quickly as possible. Yeah, this is it. This is our last section here. So I'm going to try to get up close and point blank. Not going to worry about the power-up biplane stream of jets. I don't know why I said stream of jets. That makes absolutely zero sense. But again, staying close to try to point blank, do as much damage. But you see them, like, after a little while, they start just, you know, bolting towards you. And this is it. This is our next section. This is actually a pretty fun section. So it kind of makes up for the repetitive nature of, you know, the rest of the level. You notice that there are a lot of these little baby turrets. They're very tiny. They have a tendency of dropping power-ups, including little heart pickups. So you want to watch out for that. A lot of times you'll get here without a full health bar. And so what I like to do when I first get here is focus on the little tiny turrets. And what I do is I just constantly go up and down the screen using my red firepower. And I'm going to go ahead and pick up that firepower just so I don't accidentally run into it when it's something I don't want. But here we go. We've got these bigger turrets here. And for them, you want to have a spread shot and you want to get close to them to point blank them to do maximum damage as fast as possible. Because they shoot out a lot of missiles and those missiles can be difficult to avoid. And there's another weapon power up right there. Just gonna wait for it to go to green and then red and then got it. Alright, now we have a sort of satellite turret shooting out these little ring lasers. And so, you know, sometimes they're a little hard to avoid. But what's good about these smaller turrets here now is that they will also drop health. And so I kind of want to watch for when they open up, get close, try to point blank, do as much damage as possible. Hopefully kill them. Still haven't killed one. There we go. Bunch of health pickups. Ooh, I took some hits though, so hopefully this other one opens up. Yep, there we go. Get that health. Alright, now we're close to a full health bar again. So you notice that this game is, in terms of managing health, it's a constant back and forth of losing health and then regaining health. I can get close to try to point blank, and there we go. When you destroy those big turrets, they drop lots of hearts. And then back to just sort of sweeping up and down. Just sweep up and down, just like this. And back to sweeping up and down. I always want to get rid of the tiny turrets, because they do shoot probably the most projectiles. And unlike the missile turrets, you know, these tiny turrets, their projectiles cannot be destroyed. Alright, let's grab that health. Whoops. Took multiple hits, that's fine. Now one thing I can do is actually try to charge up and wait for these other missile turrets to open up. Use my charge shot on them. Look at all those missiles they shoot out. This is why the spread shots are so much better than the bolo. I'm almost not even going to worry about taking damage here. Because, look at that, I got... Ooh, I was going to say all those hearts. Not as many as I wanted, but here's some more. So even though I tanked and I took a lot of damage there, I've got a full health bar again. Like I said, it's a constant, like, you know, sway and pull of, you know, your health loss and regeneration. Now this turret here, I believe, gives me an extra life, so you want to watch out for it. Actually, it looks like it might not have. I don't think it did. The extra life will usually kind of like come towards you, or at least move towards the left-hand side of the screen. I'm gonna have to look back at the footage actually to see if my life counter actually went up. It should have been an extra life. That's one of those extra lives that always appear. But yeah, you can tell we're actually at the end of this section because we've got a lot of turrets now. But this is also the end of the Zeppelin. And so just kind of focusing on dodging these ring lasers, but also keeping an eye on these turrets, because when they open up, I can try to get some health back. Just like that. Now, I don't necessarily need a full health bar going into the next boss fight, but I'd like a full health bar if I can, or at least close to it. Alright, there we go, full health bar. Let's see if any of these turrets open up. If they're too far on the right-hand side of the screen, even after you've destroyed the main turret, they will still open up. So you still have to be careful. But if they're too far to the left, I've noticed that they don't open up. So if you don't have a full health bar, don't bank on them opening up. And this is our main boss fight. And so again, I like to try to get as close as possible on point blank. It always dives to the left, and then it comes back towards the right, and then it starts shooting lasers. Or machine gun shots. Sound more like machine guns, not lasers. They look like lasers, sound like machine guns. But you can try to stay either above or below him, and then you won't actually touch any of the lasers. And this is another great reason why the Batarang shot is so good. Because even though I was below him, I was still hitting him. That wouldn't have been the case with the Bolo. It's the beauty of spread shots. Now, I'm not doing as much damage as I normally do, but I am playing safer. But if I wanted to, I can try to get closer, point blank, and then that's that. Now, on hard level transitions like this, you always get your health back. And sometimes after mini boss fights, you'll get your health back as well. So you don't have to worry about him not dropping health. But yeah, this is chapter 3. This is tea time. And what I like to do in this first section is take this top bar. Now you will notice that you can latch onto the top bar here, or any higher platform really. Funny enough, the manual actually says that you have to press the B button to latch onto them. You don't. Batman or Robin, they actually latch on automatically. You just jump into it. Oh, actually, these bottom ones you have to hold up. Never mind. You actually have to press something. You have to just press up. The instruction manual, though, says you have to press, like, up and B. So, you don't have to press B. All you have to do is just hold up to do that. Even I learned something during this playthrough. But what I like to do is actually just take the top route and just hold on to this top section. But since I've actually kind of lost some health, it's actually not a bad idea to destroy some of these enemies to try to get health back. But generally, the strategy is to just kind of skip everything. This is actually a really long section, and I also like to stay up top because I have less likelihood of actually getting hit by these enemies that are constantly bouncing around. You notice that these guys are also dropping hearts. I'm going to try to grab those hearts as they come up. Now, these enemies, when they roll around, they don't actually hurt you. However, they'll start having like sort of a glowing border around them. When they start glowing like that, they will start doing damage, so you have to be really careful. And they do a decent amount of damage too, if I recall correctly. So staying up top makes it so I don't have to actually deal with them head to head. I can sort of destroy them from safety. We've got these bouncing bomb rabbits, so you gotta watch out for them too. But yeah, you can just kind of skip everything. Just quickly try to get to the end. Now, if there are enemies that are jumping up really high towards you, you know, you can try to do your best to try to attack them. Otherwise, they'll catch up onto you, and they will probably start glowing, start doing damage. This is the part of the playthrough, too, where I start slurring speech and start stumbling, because this game is not what I would call short. It takes a little over an hour to go through, typically. But on this section here, you'll notice that these guys get taller and taller and taller. And so I like to stay in the top bar for when they're too tall, I can actually jump over them. Whereas if I'm on the floor, I can't do that. And that's another reason to stay on the top bar here. And if you stay towards the middle, you can kind of just like switch from one side to the other. Almost took a hit there. Whereas if I'm just stuck on one side, or like left side or right side, it's not quite as useful. If I'm in the middle, I can just switch which direction I'm aiming in and still hit, you know, pretty much all the enemies. And this is actually our last section. You can actually see that that mural in the background, and that's actually a sign that we're at the transition to the next stage, or the boss fight, actually. Now, if you do take a hit, you will actually get knocked off, so you have to be really careful there. Make sure you're double jumping. Alright, this is the Cheshire Cat, and probably one of the toughest boss fights in the game. And what I like to do is actually just kind of jump kick him over and over, and then use my charge. When he smashes his paws down into the ground, equipment from above the stage actually falls down. So you've got to be careful about that. Watch out for that stuff. On this phase, the junk is sort of randomized, so you just kind of got to play on your toes and just move back and forth. Now, you don't want to get too close to one of the paws that's not pounding, because it will actually start pounding on you randomly if you just sit under it too long. Like that one to the right actually pounded down. So sometimes it pounds for the pattern, other times it'll pound because you're just too far underneath it too soon. And after another pattern or two, it's going to actually start shooting lasers in the middle. So I want to be really careful about that. Oops, I went to the wrong side. That was my fault. Alright, lasers. Straight to the middle and just hold fire up. Don't try to jump kick here. You'll actually get hit by the upper parts of the lasers. Sometimes you can point blank with the batarang, but a lot of times you'll end up just hitting him with 2 batarangs, not all 3. Alright, and that's that. Now we want to move to either the left or the right-hand side of the screen, because the curtain's going to come back up, it's going to fall down on top of you, and it will hurt you. There are a few boss fights in this game where the bosses can still do damage, even after you've technically, lowered their health bar completely. Alright, and this is probably one of the hardest parts of the game. So what we're going to do is just try to focus here. One thing I haven't mentioned is that on some parts of the game there are actually pits. If you fall into a pit, you'll actually jump back up automatically, but you will have taken a decent amount of damage. So try not to fall into the pits. It's just unnecessary health loss. Now those flying guys up top, they will actually drop the occasional power-ups, so you kind of want to watch out for them. A lot of times they will drop weapon power-ups, so you don't really want to hit them and destroy them when they're right on top of you or above you. So you don't want to lose your batarang on this section. Other weapons make this part, I think, a lot harder than it needs to be. So I've got a full health bar, so losing those hearts, not a big deal. And now we've got these flower turrets. And this is a very tricky part. Just focus on the long strands of enemies. Not even worrying about my health right now. As long as I don't take a hit, I'm pretty much okay. Just moving from one side to the other. It's good to stay away from these guys, because they can actually, bend over and hit you. You'll notice that they kind of wobble back and forth and bend. Alright, so I don't want to pick up any of those firepower upgrades, so you can actually time them out. If you see a firepower upgrade that you don't want, and you feel like you're going to run into it by accident, you can actually just let it despawn. They sit on the screen. Whoa, that was bad. Thankfully, those enemies actually bumped me into the pit. Thankfully, that guy actually dropped a bunch of hearts. I prefer to try to get to this boss fight with the majority of my health bar, because if I don't, there's a good chance I'm going to die. And I don't want to die, although it doesn't really matter at this point, because I've got 6 lives. I'm gonna have a couple more by the end of the playthrough. Yeah, if I can get a 1 life clear, I'd like to. So, but this level is always a crapshoot for me. This is by far, I originally said this was one of the hardest levels in the game. It is the hardest level in the game. This part right here in particular is the toughest part of the game. It gets easier from here, in my opinion. So if you can get past this, you're pretty much good to beat the game. So now I actually like to sit in the middle in this part, because as you can see, or as you saw, those guys actually come in from the left and right. And there's another weapon upgrade. I shouldn't have actually jumped for that. Oh, took another hit. Very sloppy. The gaps there are actually very tight. And there's some more health. Alright, so these flower turrets, they actually have discernible patterns. You want to actually stop and analyze them. So it goes 1, 2, 3, and then a long spurt. So 1, 2, 3, and then I want to jump after the long spurt. Just like so. Just kind of take my time here. don't really need that upgrade, so that one goes 1, 2, 3, 1, long one, 1, 2, 3, long one. So I should just jump after the long one. Okay, just like that. There's no timer in this game, so you can take things nice and slow. You gotta watch out for these bomb rabbits though, because they can actually hop all the way across and hit you. Okay, let's see. 1, 2, 3, long. 1, 2, 3, long. Okay. Now, sometimes these patterns aren't always the same. So even though these patterns are how they are right now, there are other times where they'll actually be changed up. It's really interesting. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and this one doesn't even seem like it matters that much. That's a really bad pattern, honestly. There was really no way to get through. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. You know what, I'm almost starting to think that the patterns might be determined by how many projectiles are already on the screen. There are some games that do that. And so if you push the screen over too far, you might actually get a less desirable pattern. Interesting thought. 1 long one, 2, 1 long one, 1, 2. Okay. So it seemed like I had to wait after the 2 short ones. Okay. Short, short, long. Short, 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 long. So it's 3 shorts and a long. So I guess I want to jump after the long one. There's a decent amount of gap there. Yep, just like that. It's a really tough part. You have to stop and analyze. Like I said, the patterns do alter a little bit, but I took a lot of damage there, so I'm probably going to end up, you know, losing some health here, unfortunately. Now, these guys will actually drop health, so sometimes I like to try to jump kick them afterwards, but it didn't really seem like it worked. We're probably going to end up dying here, but we'll see what happens. Unfortunately, those hearts actually go off the screen. So, yeah, not very fun. It's definitely the most stressful part in the game. Alright, so these little guys actually bust out from the back wall. They'll actually go wherever you currently are on the screen. So all you have to do is just sort of, you know, wait for them to pop, then move. And they just go wherever you were when they popped out. So kind of like this. A lot of times I just sort of move back and forth, but the background becomes so chaotic looking that it's hard to see where they pop out from. Alright, one more hit and I'm dead. We'll see what happens. So this guy basically just hops all over the place. All you have to do is just go to one side of the screen, then go under him, go to the other side, go under him, rinse and repeat. Ugh. He did multiple long jumps. A lot of times he'll do a short jump. But unfortunately, I ended up losing some firepower there, and so much for a one life clear. That's a real bummer, unfortunately. But basically, you just move back and forth. A lot of times what you should do is just kind of wait and go under him when he gets too close to you. Kind of like this. But the pattern here does seem to be random. Whether he goes low or high really seems dependent on nothing. It seems completely random. So, yeah, not the best showing on this fight, unfortunately. This fight is really a crapshoot for me. Either it goes perfectly, or it happens how it just happened, where, you know, his pattern, he just gives me a bad pattern and I can't do anything about it. So, but very simple fight otherwise. I mean, this is literally all he does. There's no shooting, there's nothing else. It's not like he stops and smashes the ground and stuns you or anything like that. So there's not a whole lot you have to really worry about there. So now you'll notice that I did actually get downgraded when I died. That is one of the things that actually makes this game somewhat challenging, or more challenging than I think it would have been otherwise, is if you get to boss fights with really, really weak firepower, it can be really difficult to recover because you're doing a lot less damage. By doing less damage, you actually end up having to deal with the boss's harder patterns that come later into a boss fight. But we're actually back at a three-way spread shot, so we're pretty good now. Much like the shoot 'em up section from earlier, this one just kind of goes on and on and on. It's just these guys over and over and over again. So nothing too crazy here. Just kind of, you know, take your time. Don't slam into enemies if you can avoid it. Now, you'll notice that I'm just constantly shooting right. Now, you can aim in all directions in the jetpack mode, but the controls are very laggy here. And that's actually something with Batman and Robin in general, is the controls, the movement is laggy because, you know, you have to actually watch all the animation frames when you turn sides or you aim up and down. So, you know, it's not like a Contra game where it's just instantaneous. So that's another reason why I like to just constantly shoot forward with my spread shot. And I just move Batman up and down to compensate for wherever an enemy is on the screen. So it makes this section a lot easier, it makes it a lot less stressful, it also makes it a lot less frustrating because you're not dealing with, you know, laggy controls and unresponsive, I almost said unresponsible, what the hell? Unresponsive movement and turning and whatnot, so, and aim adjustment. So yeah, just sit down below. If the guy's too far down, if they're too far up, I'll move slightly up towards the screen. Yeah, it's pretty basic stuff, really. There's going to be another jetpack section on the final stage, and it's basically going to be the exact same thing. I am trying to avoid these guys. I believe that I actually get hurt by them if I touch them. However, on the final jetpack section in the game, you won't actually get hurt by some of the enemies. Some. There are others that will actually hurt you, and I'll point that out once we get to it. Alright, not going to worry about my weapon upgrades. Now, regarding weapon upgrades, one thing I did want to mention is that if you lose too many power-ups, if you're on a boss fight, the bosses will actually drop. Well, not the bosses, but the boss arenas will drop sort of like pity weapon upgrades. Because if you get downgraded to level 1, it's insanely difficult to try to defeat the bosses with that. Oh man, that actually sounds like a really good challenge mode, though. Trying to beat the game with just a level 1 weapon. I might need to try that, actually, just for fun. But yeah, basically, if you get to a boss fight and your weapon upgrades are way too low, they'll actually give you a few weapon upgrades just to make life a little bit easier on you. So, some of these guys here, you can actually let them go off the screen. You're going to find some long strands of those little toy-like enemies, and you'll notice that they start glowing, and they start doing lots of damage. And this is, I'm getting bombarded by enemies. I don't normally get bombarded like this. Like, look at this. There's stacks of enemies on top of each other. That's not supposed to happen. Generally, you'll get here, and it's just these long streams of little dudes, and you can just not even attack them, and then they'll just go right over you. I'm gonna try to get some health, because we're actually getting close to the boss fight, and I'd like to go in with a full health bar if possible. And you can actually tell that you're getting close to the boss fight because, you know, these jars come out. And when you start seeing the jars come out, you know you're getting close. Just gonna jump over that power-up because I don't need it. Back to being maxed out. Alright, looks like we got a weapon charge. Kill these guys faster with the weapon charge. The fast charge, I should say. Oops, I shot down. I did not mean to do that. Making a lot of mistakes in the later part of this playthrough. I think part of it is that it's getting hot in my room. I hate it when it gets warm. I usually keep the air conditioning on when I'm doing these playthroughs. But it's been really cool here. It's beginning of April as we're doing this playthrough, and it's been surprisingly cool, like actually cold. And it was cold out this morning, but it's starting to warm up, it seems like, and I don't have my AC on, and so it's actually, especially with this hoodie on, it's really starting to warm up in here, and that's also affecting me. But it is what it is. I'm sure some of you guys probably had the exact same phenomenon happen when your room starts getting hot. You just start feeling different. So, this is the Mad Hatter. This is probably one of the other hardest boss fights in the game, because you have to multitask here. Now, what I like to do is try to do as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible, but not too much damage. And the reason for that is he's got some nasty tile patterns in the background, where they just start going absolutely crazy. Like super fast and hard to avoid. So it's speeding up right here, but this one's not too bad. You just have to stay towards the middle and jump to one side or the other. And this is almost like a double jump testing section. Like this is testing your double jump timing and ability. So I'm gonna jump to one side, jump to the other, jump to one side, jump to the other. I could even sit in the middle sometimes and just like jump up like this. Just time my double jumps right. Such an amazing effect. This is one of the effects that like a lot of people like really, you know, take notice of when they play this game and when they talk about this game. Alright, so when he gets down to about 10 hit points, that was really close actually. When he gets down to about 10 hit points, the bottom of his top hat actually blows open and rabbits start falling out. The rabbits aren't really all that hard to deal with, but the big thing here is to hit his hat when it falls to the ground. His actual hat that he's wearing, if you manage to destroy it, you get a free extra life. So take advantage of that, especially if you don't already have 6 or 7 lives. But this is our final stage. There's only a few screens on this level, or a few different types of areas to go to. So this first area, I like to just jump kick my way to the right until it forces me into a little fight like this. And then what I do is I go for the turrets. I go for these little droids that come along the ground. The little droids will actually explode. They're like kamikaze droids, so you've got to watch out for them. Now these turrets, when you've done enough damage, they'll actually change. They'll actually start to look damaged, and when they do that, their patterns actually change. Their behavior changes, and they will explode if you don't destroy them fast enough. But they always drop power-ups, be it actual weapon upgrades, or they'll drop health. So if you do take a lot of damage here, you don't really have to worry too much because the flying turrets, the flying drones, will actually drop health pickups, and you can just constantly get your life back on this section. And this level, I mean, this level has a lot of health pickups. It's actually kind of interesting how basic of a level this is compared to some of the previous stages we've played. You know, it's almost like a reward for going through the hardest part of the game. You know, the game basically crescendos on Chapter 3, and then it kind of like, you know, becomes a little more down-tempo, if I was going to compare it to like music or something, on the last level. It becomes slower and a little bit easier to deal with, especially if you know what enemies actually give you health and what enemies don't give you health. Now you do have to be careful with the air drones because they will sometimes drop upgrades that you don't want, like maybe a weapon that you don't want. So you have to actually kind of watch out for that. There's some more hearts. Getting close to the end of this first section here. So there are some sections in the game where you can literally just skip everything until it forces you into a fight, and that's when you want to really want to fight. Now this one, I would recommend taking it slow because there are a bunch of like, you know, moving turrets, like these guys right here. These scientists, sometimes they will drop health. However, there is actually a new gameplay mechanic here that's introduced on this final stage, where weapon upgrades will actually have a gray option. Do not pick that up. It will downgrade you. So you got to be careful about that. Now I've lost almost half my health, but this is about where enemies start dropping health for me. The little drones in particular, or the little droids I should say. So I can just sort of tank my way through this section. It's not really a big deal. Because a lot of these droids will drop health pickups like that. They always drop 5 hearts when they do drop 5 hearts. They don't always drop hearts, but they usually do. And when they do, you can just grab them. I actually like grabbing the hearts from one side to the other, because you can actually end up collecting all 5, just jumping through them and then like sort of jump kicking into the rest. There we go, just like that. So I took a bunch of hits, but I picked up 5 hearts. Sometimes the doctors drop them too. Just like so. Now there's gonna be sort of this ice machine. It's got a huge hitbox. So you don't want to get too close to it. You want to kind of get away from it a little bit. But the problem is you've got enemies coming at you from all sides of the screen. So, like I said, it's really good to actually just kind of take your time on this section. Otherwise, you end up taking a lot of unnecessary damage. Let's not get downgraded. We don't want that. Now again, I still feel the Batarang is the best weapon for this level. However, we are going to be switching up for the final boss fight. The final jetpack section of the game, right before the final boss fight, actually really seems to want you to have the bolo. It only drops the bolo on the final section. So if I wanted to, I could actually switch up to the bolo right now, because it's going to be inevitable anyway. I mean, you can technically avoid the bolo pickups, but trust me when I say the bolo is the best weapon on the final boss. The Batarang, while you can hit the boss more consistently, it doesn't do nearly as much damage unless you're actually hitting the boss with all three of your boomerangs. So yeah, the bolo just does crazy damage on the boss fight, and it is definitely the preferred weapon. And the final boss actually, you know, used to be really difficult for me back in the day, but I found in doing all these playthroughs recently that it's actually pretty easy. It's got a pretty easy strategy, and there's ways to constantly get your health back. So these, you know, spaceman-looking dudes, you can actually run straight into them. You won't actually take any damage. So what I like to do is just kind of sit right on top of them. Now there are gonna be these rotating spheroid type of enemies. I don't even know what to call them. These guys right here. You don't want to touch their air that's coming out. There's probably ice or something like that. This is Mr. Freeze's level after all. Might not look that icy, but I'm gonna assume it's cold air or something like that. They always drop health pickups for the most. Actually, I said always, but now I'm thinking. I'm actually starting to doubt myself. On the final boss fight, they always drop health pickups. So on this section, they actually might drop some other power-ups. But you'll notice that all the weapon drops so far have been bolos. It's basically just solid green. Yeah, they do drop other power-ups. It's not just health here. But on the final boss section, it is always just health. Or the final boss portion, I should say. So, much like the previous jetpack section, I just hold right. Not hold right, but I just shoot right. And just constantly shooting right. I don't bother aiming diagonally. I don't bother aiming backwards. If there's an enemy behind me, I just sit right on top of it. You know, again, these other jetpack guys, you know, you can just sit right on top of them. There's no penalty unless they shoot. But they always take a little while to charge up their shot, so they never shoot immediately. And so you actually want to try to take care of them as fast as possible for that reason. You notice that their guns will start charging up. Basically, the tip of the nozzle will start charging up, and then you know they're going to start shooting. Now, I'm actually just kind of tanking my way through this section. Like, literally, like, the spherical objects, or droids, will, you know, they will hurt me when I touch them, but, you know, there's so many health drops in this section, it's not even a big deal. Alright, so Mr. Freeze, this is our final boss. And, basically what we do is we just hit his glass off first. This is phase 1. There are 3 phases to this fight. And if you ever take a hit, destroy these droids here, or these drones, or pods, whatever you want to call them, and they'll always drop health. So I'm back at a full health bar. I used to think this boss fight was so difficult, but it's really not. Second phase, he goes around the screen shooting, and I like to sit in the top left corner and shoot down. Try to dodge his bullets if I can. Sometimes you're gonna take a hit. It's just not possible to completely avoid everything. It is what it is. But then straight back to the top left after I've grabbed some health. Just like this. I used to try to like go around the screen with him when I was younger, and I would always die at this fight. But it's actually really easy. You just sit in the top left. Got full health again because of the little drone. Sometimes I'll actually start aiming to the right so I can get some hits in when he's at the top of the screen. But then rinse and repeat. Back to the corner. Dodge. Corner. I took a hit. That's fine. I don't really care if I take a hit. It's okay. Because I'm going to get some health back right here. we go. Right back to the corner. And now once he gets down to about, well, it looks like it's 14, he goes into phase 3, and you just need to hit the bottom of his ship. And hope that he doesn't dive bomb you too much, but he likes to go towards you. And there we go. We just beat The Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Sega Genesis and Megadrive. We get a little short ending sequence with some great music. And then the game will actually automatically just kind of skip back into its attract mode, which is basically the introduction sequence that just loops basically forever. But yeah, that's The Adventures of Batman and Robin, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this playthrough. If you're brand new to this game, hopefully you learned a thing or two. Hopefully this playthrough was useful. I'd say it was a pretty smooth run in the beginning. Not so smooth in the second half of the game, or I'd say the second third of the game. But that is what it is. That's just kind of how it goes with Batman and Robin. No matter how good you are, sometimes you just get a bad luck of the draw. Yeah, I only died once. Was hoping for a 1 life clear, but you know, again, that's just how it goes. Sometimes you just make mistakes, and towards the end of Mad Hatter's level, with the mushrooms in particular, you can just take so much damage. The beams there just do a lot of health, unfortunately. So, and there aren't really many health pickups like before the goofy boss fight at the end there. So. And I got the bad luck of the draw on that boss as well, and just ended up dying. It is what it is, but you guys have a great idea now of what to expect from boss patterns and stuff like that. Some bosses I forgot to mention is if you do too much damage too quickly, they will go into their harder patterns, which is usually towards the end of their fight. Like Mad Hatter, if you do way too much damage in the beginning, he'll actually go into one of his last crazy patterns, which is really hard to avoid. Thankfully, we didn't have to experience that, but just be warned. I do recommend trying to kill bosses as fast as possible. That's how you make this game as easy as possible. But there are some bosses where that can actually kind of bite you in the rear, specifically Mad Hatter. So, trying to think if there's anything else to really explain here. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head. So I do appreciate you guys hanging out with me and watching. If you actually made it this far in the video, let me know in the comments below. Let me know if you played this game as well, or just if you haven't, let me know how you sort of perceive this game as a newcomer to it. I was actually streaming this just a few days ago, and I was surprised at how many people hadn't seen this before. It's one of the most touted Genesis games at this point in time as of doing this video, because of its sound and its visuals and just the overall polish. But yeah, I still run into people that haven't seen it, and so they're actually just genuinely surprised when they first see the game. So yeah, if you're one of those people, post a comment down below and let me know. Be curious to see what your thoughts are in the game based on what you've seen so far. And yeah, that's gonna do it for me, guys. If you're new to my channel, consider subscribing. I've got a lot of Let's Plays like this and many, many more to come. If you're already subbed, thank you always for your continued support. Feel free to give the video a thumbs up. And I guess until the next one, guys, take it easy.